What is up, everybody? Well, we are back. We have another DCEU movie out this past weekend in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. We've got a whole lot of arguments in the fan base over whether or not it's a DC movie or MCU knockoff, and we have a
Oh man.
whole lot of headlines saying that this is a gigantic failure, flop, and disaster for the DCEU. So we're going to get into all of that. Durban, it's been a while. How you doing, my friend?
I am doing fantastic. It has been a while, so I'm super glad to be able to hang out with you today and dive into some DC stuff because we've been talking a lot of Marvel. Well, not you and I, but all over YouTube, we've been talking a lot of Marvel. I am so excited to have something new in DC to talk about.
Yeah, I know. And it's funny because this is the last DCEU movie we're going to get until the Batman.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that.
I was literally talking in my review, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna update my DCEU rank, and I'll do it on the next movie this year." And I looked, and I was like, "Oh, there is no more. The next one's going to be the big one, the one that we've been waiting for since we started State of the DCEU."
Yeah, I know. And I guess technically we won't know if the Batman is part of the DCEU until we get the Flash and how they decide to divvy up the multi-universe stuff. So I guess we'll have to see with the Flash how they're going to take all of that and organize it together. So, yeah.
Yeah. The next couple of these State of the DCEU should be very interesting. But this
I
one
hope so.
Should be an interesting discussion because not only do we have a new movie to talk about, so there's a whole discussion there, but you and I were very different on our reception here, which doesn't normally happen. So this is, I think, it might be the first DCEU movie where you and I are somewhat on opposite ends.
And
then we have a whole lot to discuss with all the headlines coming out about this movie. So first and foremost, give me your quick couple sentence overview of like your review of the Suicide Squad.
So, like, my overall review, if I'm comparing it to the first Suicide Squad movie, it's genius. It is by far and away so much better. And I liked it even better than Birds of Prey. And I didn't hate Birds of Prey. I liked Birds of Prey. Yeah. So, like, in terms of Harley Quinn being on the big screen, this is my favorite. So, in that, like, yeah, I'd probably give it B minus range if I'm just comparing it to Suicide Squad. But to the rest of the DCEU, and I'm talking like the big hero movies like Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Batman v Superman. It's like, I don't know. This is just average to me. I didn't hate this movie. I found it entertaining and it was fun. It just didn't stand out as, oh, this has changed the face of DC and this is absolutely fantastic. It's like, it was fun. It's just average to me. It's not my favorite. I watched it twice and I'll be good for a while.
Now, when you walked into it, were you expecting it to be like this huge game changer, or were you just kind of going in expecting it to be a little fun ride?
No, I didn't have any expectations, just to be honest with you. I mean, that's how little I like the first Suicide Squad. I mean, and it's not like I hate the Suicide Squad. Like that animated movie, Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, is fantastic. I love that movie. And so I didn't have bad expectations for this. I just didn't have high expectations for this movie. So I didn't go in thinking this was going to be a game changer or anything. I'm just saying that because it seems like a lot of people have been saying this is like the best DC movie they've seen. I'm like,
yeah, we'll get into that.
No, it's not the best. It's not the worst. So,
yeah,
but it's definitely not the best.
Yeah. See, when I walked in, my expectations were probably similar. I had very similar reaction to you with the first Suicide Squad up until time has made the Justice League just this disgusting project. That was my least favorite DCU movie since basically the beginning. Still can have fun with it, but I just never really have the desire to really watch it. A lot of missed opportunity. And when I heard that James Gunn was coming over to DC when Marvel was deciding that they didn't realize who they had hired, I guess. The guy that made Super, and I'm like, oh, you have a weird sense of humor. Yeah, duh. So when he came over, I was like, okay, cool. I mean, I like what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy. He might be a good fit. I did not like the trailers, though. The trailers, to me, I looked at it and I said, this feels like they're trying to do Guardians of the Galaxy. It was just the trailer picked all of those little moments, and you couldn't quite get the best representation of what this movie is actually like. The super hyper violence, it's not really prevalent in the trailers. Some of the really sick, dark sense of humor is not really in the trailers. They have a dick joke. That's about it.
And I agree with you on the trailer. There was And that's probably why my expectations weren't high, because there's nothing about the trailers that just impressed me.
Yeah, I was the same way. I was like, okay, maybe I'll like this, maybe I won't, but I did not walk in expecting to love it. And like you, as soon as all the big gotcha headlines and hyperbolic reviews, this is the greatest thing ever. And it was just like, come on, guys. Like, does everything have to be a 1 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10? Can you just say, that was a damn good time? Like, that was cool. 8 out of 10. You guys will enjoy it. Like, it's got to be either mind-blowing, changing my life, or the worst thing ever. And that was exactly what the reception was. All the early reviews said it was the greatest thing ever. And as soon as I dropped my review, all the comments from the typical Marvel fan, DC hater clones that come out and the trolls, it was like 1 out of 10. And even on Facebook, there was, I didn't even really join the conversation because I was just getting annoyed, but a ton of comments that were saying trash, horrible, and it's just like, you need to watch more movies. But I walked out of the movie, and like you, it wasn't something that I thought, like, reset the stage. It wasn't like it wasn't anywhere near as ambitious as a lot of the Zack Snyder projects have been, or even even trying to do some things like what Wonder Woman did when Wonder Woman came out and kind of reset the narrative of how the DCEU is doing. But I had a good time, so I think I walked in with mediocre expectations. I had fun with it. I didn't bust out laughing like a lot of people probably were. I just kind of a few good laughs, a few snickers. I enjoyed a lot of the action. I thought that the dark sense of humor had a nice balance here, because sometimes James Gunn can go way too far for me. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is a good example of that, where it's like that bleak sense of humor just doesn't work here. I thought it worked well here. I liked a lot of the characters, which I wasn't really sure how I was going to do that, because I didn't even know 90% of these characters. And so by the end of it, I think I walked in expecting nothing, and I walked out saying, hey, that was a good time.
Now, did you see this on the big screen, or did you just do HBO Max?
I did. I haven't watched it on HBO Max yet.
Okay.
I was going to do that for a rewatch, but yeah, I went to go see it Thursday night, opening night. So.
See, I just did HBO Max because, like, I wasn't super excited. It's like, I don't want to spend extra money to see this movie. So I just did HBO Max. And in my kind of thought process, I was like, yeah, I don't need to see this on the big screen. Like, was it a better experience to see it on the big screen?
Well, I mean, I can't compare it, but the thing that I'll say about this movie is that I love the action, and action always hits harder with a big screen. But the main thing really is comedy. Like, a lot of times, if you watch comedies at home, you'll smile or something, but you don't really have that kind of unconscious need to bust out laughing a lot of times, I feel. But if you're in a crowd and the crowd laughs, it's almost contagious. Right. So I think that might be a little bit of a difference in maybe our experience, because there was a lot of times where people were busting out laughing, and I was like, and I'd laugh out loud, where if I was at home, I'd just be like,
yeah, that's true. I do miss the big screen experience. I mean, not to talk Marvel here on a DC video, but like when Captain America got Thor's hammer and the entire theater jumps to their feet in applause, like, that's contagious. I really miss an environment like that. Maybe that would have helped my experience a little bit better if I had seen it on the big screen and there were enough people there.
Possibly. But yeah, I walked out of it and I was just like, okay, that was a good time. There was a guy that he's a fan of mine. I've met him a couple of times at the movie theater, and he started his channel not too long ago as well. But I caught him there, and we kind of watched it together, and we were talking afterwards, and he was kind of probably more in line with you, where he was like, yeah, that was cool. It was kind of stupid, kind of fun, whatever. And I was like, I don't know. I guess I expected so little that I was like, hey, that was a pretty good time. I knew it wasn't going to blow my mind like top 3 comic book movie of all time. I think that was something that I saw 5 or 6 different people throwing around. It's just
favorite comic book movie of all time. For some people, it's like, if you're going to say your top 3 DC movies or DCEU, it's like, I can respect that. But when they go top 3 comic book movies of all time, I'm like, no, no. You just wait till that hype wears off and you go back and watch the 89 Batman or The Dark Knight or any number of fantastic comic book movies, and then be reminded what a fantastic comic book movie is.
Absolutely. So do you feel like James Gunn and his sensibilities and his kind of style made the movie better, or do you think it was just simply WB taking the handcuffs off and letting a director make their movie? Because we still have this whole thing with the Ayer cut coming on, which I'm not very optimistic that we're ever going to see it. I don't think that WB has any motivation to ever give themselves a second punch in the face.
No.
But
Well,
there's
the
always
Snyder
that
Cut is
argument.
worth it. The Snyder Cut was a
Yeah.
different movie. It's not the same movie. They reshot the movie. I don't think the Ayer cut is even that extreme. I could be wrong. So, like, for me,
From the way that David Ayer's been saying on Twitter, it sounds like it's an extreme difference. But then again, we'll
oh
never
boy,
know until we see it. Because
that's true. I would be curious to see it.
yeah.
I'm just not hyped to see it. But I agree with you. Why would WB take another punch in the face?
Yeah, exactly. So do you think it was just James Gunn that made this property that much more fun than the first one, or do you think it was just they gave him a pile of money and said, "Go do your thing," and that was the big difference?
Well, it's funny because I do think James Gunn and his sensibilities actually made it work better. Because when I was watching the first Suicide Squad, my first thought was, oh, you guys are just trying to do a Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, that was my thought with the first Suicide Squad. But when James Gunn of Guardians of the Galaxy comes over to do the Suicide Squad, ironic that I didn't get a Marvel sense from the movie at all, but I think his humor and his sensibility and that kind of dark tone that he can take, I think it worked well for those characters. And so everything felt, and this is me talking the positives of the movie, it felt more natural than the first Suicide Squad because everything was so cut weird. You can tell humor was being inserted in there. So like it wasn't natural. And so by letting James Gunn, and everything I've read says they let James Gunn have freedom. So I guess I have no reason to not trust it. And I got to assume he had freedom. And I think he did a good job with it. I think he, his humor worked well, and it made the characters and the humor and the action flow. And it had really good like character moments. So you got attached to characters in certain moments, then would dive back into some pretty dark humor and some pretty good humor and all that stuff. So I think letting James Gunn do his thing didn't hurt this movie at all.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, we've got plenty of examples now that anytime that they stick their hands in the cookie jar, we get a disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the Batman v Superman theatrical cut. You have the Justice League, and we won't be able to compare to say for sure. But I mean, I would bet money that I would at least like the Ayer cut more. How much more? I have no idea.
I would be very curious to see it. Like, I'm just somebody who really does not like that first Suicide Squad movie, but I will give, if an Ayer cut ever came out, like you, I doubt it. That won't be one that comes out in 10 to 20 years.
Yes.
But that would be one I would give a shot just to see like the difference and see what was the original intent there. And seeing how radically different Zack Snyder's Justice League was, I would be, because that was Snyderverse. That was firm in the Snyderverse. So I'd be very, very curious to see how that was going to play into Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League.
Yeah, for sure. I think my two biggest reservations on whether or not the Ayer cut would be a gigantic change for me. One of them is David Ayer himself. Now, I like some of his movies. I love End of Watch. I really like Street Kings. I think that's underrated. And I really like Fury. But a lot of his movies kind of feel like they're doing the same thing over and over again. Like we just got, what was it? The Tax Collector or something like that. I can't remember if I'm getting the title right, but it was the one with Shia LaBeouf that they were, really hyping up, that he had gotten a full body tattoo and he went totally method with it. And I thought that movie was terrible. And it was just the same, LA South Central street gang stuff that David Ayer pumps into a lot of his movies. So I don't really know how much different his vision is than the version that we got. I know that it's confirmed already that they took the movie, they recut it, they added a lot of different soundtrack to it to try to make it more like Deadpool, and they tried to pump a lot more humor and a lot more of that Guardians of the Galaxy vibe in there. But if you take all of that out, what movie do we have? He said that it's very dramatic. It's kind of a character piece talking about these outcasts of society, and that's cool. But is that going to work? Because you do still have to have some fun with these characters. It can't be totally bleak and that tone that he goes for in all his other films. The second reservation for me is that no matter what cut we get, we're still getting the same villain at the end. Yeah, we're still getting the little dance and
the weird hula hoop dancing thing, whatever that is.
What they call her, the Enchantress or whatever.
The Enchantress, yes.
Yeah, so we're still going to get that. We get more Joker scenes, but we're still going to get that because he said all along that he only had a few weeks to write the script, and he's regretted since he did the movie of not making the Joker the main villain. And they're not going to give him whatever. What was it? $70 million that Zack Snyder got to go refinish everything. He ain't getting that.
No, he's not getting that.
Yeah. So I don't know. For the sake for the sake of giving him the benefit of the doubt, just like with Zack Snyder, I have no reason whatsoever to doubt that his version would be better, because it would be foolish at this point to think that WB knew better than their director, because every single time that they haven't. But I just don't know. I don't think it would be the level of change that we saw with Zack Snyder's Justice League, where it was just like, this is a totally different movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't see it being that big of a thing, but I could see it just being better in the fact that at least it would be a consistent tone, like a consistent tone throughout the movie, and a consistent tone with the DCEU, like as it was coming out with Man of Steel, BVS, and then Justice League. So, like, I could probably see it fitting better, which is a good thing. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess I just don't believe that there's a cut out there that is that extremely different. I'm not saying there isn't. There could be. It's just, I don't know. Part of me is just kind of done with that whole thing. I got the Snyder cut, and I am so happy, but I'm just kind of done.
Yeah, exactly. That was exhausting enough, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was very exhausting.
Campaign. Oh, man. All right, well, let's dive into this new Suicide Squad a little bit more. So, was there any characters walking into this movie in this huge cast of D-list characters that you were really looking forward to?
No, because I had never heard of them before.
Exactly.
So, like,
I know Harley, I know Rick Flag.
Yeah.
Is that Deadshot? I don't know.
Yeah. But, like, okay, so in the trailer, when you have, how do you say his name? Michael Rook, who was Yondu.
Michael Rooker? Yeah.
Michael Rooker. Gosh, I don't know why I always mess that up so bad. But Michael Rooker, who's Yondu,
Savant.
like, when I saw Savant, I went, now that looks interesting, kind of, but it's because I like Yondu and I like that actor. So I was very interested to see his performance. When I saw Nathan Fillion on the cast list, I went,
by the way, guys, we might be getting into spoilers.
Yes, spoilers. Nathan Fillion, I love. I'm getting a Charlie horse in my leg, and that really hurts. Okay, but Nathan Fillion, I love. And the fact that he was going to be in this movie, I can't tell you how excited I was. So, like, those were characters I was looking forward to. And then King Shark. I was watching the animated Harley Quinn show on HBO Max. He's kind of funny in that one. So I was like, all right, I'm curious. And then hearing Sylvester Stallone was King Shark. So if I had to pick characters that I was interested in seeing, it would probably be those. And most of it is because of the actors. Yeah.
Yeah, I was I love Idris Elba, so I was curious what he was going to do.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know what his character was, and I don't even know if I even knew that he wasn't going to be playing Deadshot. I knew that they said they were still holding out for Will Smith to come back, so I figured he was somebody different. He's kind of the same.
He really is kind of the same. Like when they showed the setup and he's talking to his daughter, like other than the relationship between him and his daughter, you could
tell they wrote it for Will Smith, and then they were like, oh, okay, well, we'll just move this around and we'll just keep it the same. But yeah, like you, I love Michael Rooker. I love that guy. So as soon as the movie opened with him, I was like, yes, he's going to be a cool character. Like you, really like Nathan Fillion, and he's done a lot of work with James Gunn. He was in Slither, so I was really looking forward to his character. Of course, Harley Quinn's great, so I love seeing her. King Shark, not only because that's just a cool, wild character. He kind of felt like the Groot of the group, where I was like, that's probably going to be a lot of fun. And then you add Sly in there as the voice, and I'm just sold. And then, yeah, exactly. And then I really love Joel Kinnaman, so I was really looking forward to seeing how they were going to do Rick Flag differently in this movie.
So let me say this: it's not that I don't like Joel Kinnaman. I could have cared less about Rick Flag in the first Suicide Squad, so I didn't even care that he was returning. But this movie did a good job making me care more about a character I didn't care about at all in the first one.
Yeah. And then it was goes without saying, there's a lot of character deaths in this movie.
Man.
I mean, they advertised it like crazy. James Gunn's talked about it numerous times before the movie came out, that they pretty much gave him carte blanche. I'm sure they probably told him, don't kill Harley Quinn, if anything. But everybody else, I think they were like, do whatever you want. Whoever dies, dies. We'll bring him back if we have to. But yeah, when this movie opens up and you're getting introduced to all these wild characters and all these different actors that I like, and then all of a sudden in the first 5 minutes, half the cast just gets wiped out.
Oh my gosh.
On paper, the fact that a lot of the actors that I was really looking forward to were part of that group dying in the opening scene probably would have turned me off to the movie. There was something, I guess I'm just used to James Gunn's humor, to where I saw it and I was like, of course he's going to kill half the damn cast in the first 5 minutes. I mean, as soon as Pete Davidson's head explodes and all of a sudden these other people's limbs are getting shot up, I was like, oh, they're all going to die.
Yeah.
They're all going to die.
It was funny because the Weasel dude, like the funniest moment with the Weasel dude is when that one guy freaks out like, you put me next to a werewolf? So like,
yeah.
You know, I'm laughing at these little moments like that. And then the werewolf belly flopping the Weasel belly flopping into the water. And they're all like, did anybody check if this thing could swim? And it died right there on the beach. That was kind of my signal of, oh my gosh, anybody could die at any time. But I had no idea what I was in for. I had no idea. Mm-hmm. I mean, first off, what's that dude's name? Blackguard or whatever his name is?
Blackguard, yeah. I
did not like him. From the very beginning, I did not like him. So when his face got blown off, I went, oh, good. Yeah. Woo! Done with that one.
Yep, exactly.
I had this moment where I was concerned Harley Quinn was going to die if I did not remember the trailers. And seeing shots of her in the trailers that I had not yet seen. So I was like, well, okay, at least they're not going to kill off Harley Quinn. But the most heartbreaking thing was killing Nathan Fillion. You don't kill Nathan Fillion. You keep him alive. He is the character that single-handedly makes anything good. You keep that dude going. That was the only one I was really upset with. And I laughed when Captain Boomerang died. Again, Suicide Squad 1, I didn't care about him. And I didn't care about him in this movie. But when he died, it was just shocking because it's Jai Courtney, it's Captain Boomerang. This was a big character, and he got fried by an exploding helicopter. And I went, who's going to make it to the end of this one? So to me, that was a positive. The fact that it's like they took away my ability to kind of predict what was going to happen. There were still some predictable things, but like that was an interesting little path that James Gunn picked and introduced us to it right there at the beginning.
Yep. I thought it was a really clever way to set the tone immediately for what to expect, because you walk in, I mean, you see the trailers, they're cut in certain ways to where you think that this entire team is going to be throughout the whole movie, and it's a lot of characters, and it's a lot of characters that most of us don't know anything about. Yeah. So you're like, how are they going to develop these guys? Are we going to know anything about them? Am I going to care about them? Oh, well, 8 of them just died, so that makes it easier. And it just told you right away, like you said, anybody, it could be on the chopping block at any moment. You get a lot of dark humor right away, so you're expecting, okay, a lot of people are going to have their heads explode. There's going to be a lot of bleakness. There's going to be a lot of crazy humor where it's almost uncomfortable that I think this is funny. And it kind of, like you said, with Captain Boomerang and a couple of these characters, it ties itself to the original Suicide Squad just enough.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it kind of wipes the slate clean aside from Harley Quinn. So it's like, all right, we're going to throw you a bone, and now it's my movie.
Yeah.
We got a super chat.
Yes,
hello,
we did.
Amanda. What's up, my dude? Don't watch these kinds of movies, but wanted to show support.
Well, that's awesome.
My fellow Chucky fanatic, I'm going to have to change that. I'm going to have to give you some movies like this to get you on the train. But thank you so much for the support. So yes, so that whole opening scene I thought was really cool. And I laughed out loud whenever Michael Rooker, who was set up from the opening frame to be like this cold-hearted, systematic killer, you know, like crushing a bird in the opening 30 seconds. And then he's the one that's just like, just runs away because you knew at some point, like Amanda Waller's got to pop somebody's head off.
Yeah, like Slipknot, but who would have thought it was going to be Michael Rooker?
Yep, exactly. So
I mean, the trailers and everything sold us on that guy. And he's the coward who got his head blown off. He's the Slipknot. Yep, exactly. So it was, I thought it was a lot of fun. And I thought it was cool how there was a couple moments where they had little flashbacks and changed the timeline a little bit with the way that they were presenting the story. Then we get introduced to our actual team, the actual alpha team, if you will, where they're all coming out of the water. And it's like, oh, well, the distraction team's dying, so we'll get the movie started now. And it's funny because as soon as they came out of the water, I went, oh, yeah, they're the ones I saw in the trailers more than all the rest of those guys. I guess that makes perfect sense that Amanda Waller sent 2 teams and had the other team be just fodder for the fire.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll talk about our main team. So I've already said, we both agree. We really like Rick Flag a lot more in this movie, to the point where when he got killed, I was like, no, of any character I didn't want to die, that was it.
Well, it's funny because I didn't know I was getting attached to Rick Flag until he died at the end. I just went, oh my gosh, I care. Why do I care? I don't care that there's a giant starfish in this building, but I do care that Rick Flag just got stabbed in the heart and he's dead.
Yeah, and they went far enough to show the heart getting pierced, and it was just like, oh, so now you're just making us know for sure that this guy's done.
Yes.
So I really liked him. Surprisingly, I really liked Idris Elba as Bloodsport. To me, like aesthetically, he's Deadshot. Like you already said, the story set up, the skills, he never misses his target, all that stuff. It's basically a lateral.
When he gets in his fighting mode, he puts on that helmet that covers his whole face. Like Deadshot puts that thing on, and when he puts it on, people are gonna die. He really, like, you could just really tell. Like, I'm sure that's canon, all of that. I'm sure all of Bloodsport stuff is canon, but it's just, you could tell though they really wanted Will Smith in this one. But I agree. I like Idris Elba in general, and so it was cool to see him in this movie. And I was expecting only good from him, and I got only good from him. So, aside from just looking at it going, this is painfully obvious you wanted Will Smith.
Yeah, exactly. And I liked how he was kind of in that leader role, but he wasn't like the obvious leader. But by the end, he kind of grew into that role. And there was like moments of heart in there, which is another thing that James done was really good. Like there's all this dark, bleak humor. People are dying left and right. But then you get these little moments like him and Ratcatcher promise to get each other out. And it's just like, oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
And speaking of Ratcatcher, that another character where I'm just like, who the hell is this?
Yeah.
And by the end of the movie, I was really invested in her and that little rat.
Oh, I was too. Little Sebastian. Like, oh man, I couldn't. And she's still not my favorite character.
No, for sure.
Really did do a good job of making me like her.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not like her at all when we first met her. I was like, oh, this is so dumb. And as the movie began to embrace how dumb it was, like I really began to enjoy it a whole lot more as a whole. And then I started to really like her character, especially that little heart-to-heart moment between her and Idris Elba on that bus.
Yeah, and what was cool about it too is like her power seems so throwaway. It's like, okay, you can summon rats, whatever. That's kind of stupid. And then you get to the final battle with Starro, and she summons this whole like country of rats, and you're like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. That could do some damage now.
Yeah, and then you have that Taika Waititi flashback to her father, making it even more relevant. The idea that something as small and hated as these rats have purpose, and if they have purpose, so do we all. And so it became almost the whole cornerstone for the moral of the movie. And I was like, I respect that.
Yeah, and a lot of that is tied to the rat. Like I loved the moments where the rat was like wanting to shake Idris Elba's hand and stuff like that, and he was just that was almost like the Baby Groot moments. It was almost like the Baby Groot moments of this movie was Sebastian. And
funny these little Guardians moments we're finding in here, right? Like King Shark is kind of the Groot character, and then we have our little rat, and it's it's kind of funny, our little baby Groot.
Yeah, and speaking of King Shark, that might have been one of my favorite, if not my favorite character, just because of the dynamic. It's this man-eating monster that's just interested in num-nums. But he also wants friends. So if he thinks that you're his friends, then he's going to be like the Hulk right next to you, just tearing through everybody. And I love like within minutes, you get the scene where he's running around that little aquarium, and it's just like this little PG kids movie for a minute.
Yes.
And then it was either right before that or right after that, he grabs the guy and literally tears him in half. And it's just like, this is the same character.
That shot was quite epic. Slow motion, a person torn in half as lightning strikes right next to him. It's like, there is a comic book panel right there.
Yeah.
Now, how much do you know about King Shark?
Little to nothing. I've only seen him on The Flash a couple of times.
Because I was wondering, is this a mistake in the movie, or does this tell us about the weird fishy thingies? Because how many times was that guy shot, not a scratch? He fell from the top of Jotunheim to pavement, and he's getting shot, and he still gets up, hardly a scratch. Mm-hmm. But those fishy thingies that he thought were his friends drew blood. Yep. Nothing else drew blood, but those things drew blood. That was when I got to that part in the end. I was like, wait, they're making him bleed? Whoa. What are those things? If nothing else has made King Shark bleed, what are those things that now he's bleeding?
Yeah. I wanted to know more about those things. Like, I thought it was a fun little switcheroo, but I wanted to know more about them. The Willmeister, yes, when Ratcatcher summoned the rats at the end, did it remind you of the Willard movies? Certainly did. I don't know if you've seen Willard. It's like a horror thriller where a guy has a bunch of rats that he can control.
Oh.
And then if I'm not mistaken, okay, we got two more. So we got Polka Dot Man. which on paper I would have thought would have been the most throwaway character of this movie, but in competition for my favorite character, just because of how insanely stupid it is. It's just like you throw polka dots and then he gets these little rashes, and I was like, what is going on with this guy? But for some reason, this weird little character arc that he had where he sees his mom everywhere,
Oh
and then
my
they get that whole thing where Starro is his mom. And even though I knew immediately, just by, again, I'm on that James Gunn wavelength, I knew immediately as soon as he felt redeemed that he was like, I'm a superhero. I was like, you're about to die in 3, 2, 1. But it felt like he kind of came full circle. Like, that wasn't a character where I was like, no, I need more. I was like, no, that felt like that should have been his end.
Yeah.
But it was just fun all the way through, this weird character that
I think I could agree with you on that one. And like the first time he displayed his powers and you're watching people melt when polka dots hit them, I'm cracking up because I was like, well, I guess I didn't expect that. This guy has earned my respect a little bit. But it's when he said, I hate killing people, but when I picture them as my mom, I can do it. And then you see the big starfish as his mom, everybody is his mom. All of those things were pretty hilarious.
Yeah, I love that line with Idris Elba. He's like, do you see that? He's like, what? It's your mom!
And then it is. That's reminded me the most of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters. When suddenly it's a giant, his mom. That sounds like a bad your mom joke. Up there knocking down buildings.
Royal Warlord says, hey guys, love the content. Any DC villains you think could have been a good addition to the movie that weren't here? Maybe even a hero. I don't think we needed a hero for this one.
Yeah.
But a DC villain that could have been in here that wasn't.
I'd go with the Mad Hatter. I have not seen that character in live action from Batman. And with his whole Alice in Wonderland fixation and messing with people's minds and stuff, he might be just weird enough to have played well in this, or at least to have been killed on the beach.
I'll agree with you. That would be an interesting one. And you know what? We got two that are going right into what we're about to talk about.
Ooh.
I love John Cena as Peacemaker, and that's coming from someone who did not like him at all before this. I wholeheartedly agree. And then what are your thoughts on Peacemaker surviving? So let's talk Peacemaker.
Yeah.
So Peacemaker was the character walking into this that I was like, I'm either going to really love or really hate this character, because I have nothing against John Cena, and I don't think he's terrible, but I have not seen him in anything where I've really been impressed. I don't think that he is that good of an actor yet to really carry a movie. I didn't think he added anything to Fast 9. I certainly didn't care for his early movies like The Marine and other movies where he was just kind of the new action guy from WWE. And he's gotten a lot of steam in the comedy world. And aside from maybe one or two like small little appearances he's done, I never really thought he was that funny either. Like, I didn't think Blockers was that good of a movie. So I have not really been on the John Cena train.
Yeah.
This is the one movie I've seen where his character, to me, I was like, okay, I'm on board for that. And before walking into this movie, I knew they were doing a whole spin-off series on HBO Max with this character, which made me have even less faith for some reason. I was like, why of all these characters are we giving a show to John Cena? But whenever I got into this movie, especially by about the time that him and Bloodsport started having that little pissing contest where they were kind of like showing off who could kill people in the sneakiest ways, and then you get that great payoff where they find out that they were killing all these people that were on their side. That whole sequence, I was like, okay, I'm kind of on board with this character. And by the end, aside from killing Rick Flag, which I'm still a little upset about,
me too,
I was cool with the idea of him having a TV show. And I wasn't sure about it. I was like, okay, well, it must be a prequel then. And then when you get to the post-credit scene and he's still awake and they're like, he's going to save the world, I thought that was a good little backdoor, entrance into this series. So I know you have a different opinion, but
I do.
I was totally on board with Peacemaker, and I expected the exact opposite.
Yeah, I'm not on that John Cena train. And after seeing this, I'm still not on that John Cena train. But it's not like it repelled me, right? So I did love that scene where he and Idris Elba were killing all the people in that camp, which turned out was all good guys. But when they're just having that competition of who could kill the most and kill the most brutally, like that was a pretty funny moment. But otherwise, I don't know. Like it just didn't stand out to me. It didn't impress me. it wasn't something that caught my attention. I mean, the rat waving at people, little Sebastian caught my attention and became a more lovable character to me than Peacemaker did.
Mm-hmm.
He just seemed kind of bland. And the only place where he wasn't bland is right after he killed Rick Flag. That moment he made that turn and was villainous and was Amanda Waller's backup plan, that's where the character had more interest to me. But the idea of him having his own show on HBO Max about Peacemaker, I am just not sold. Just not sold, especially in a DC world where you supposedly have Superman and supposedly have Batman and supposedly have the Flash, and we're going to spend time on Peacemaker.
That was my thoughts before I walked into it. I was like, why? Of all the characters, why? But for some reason it worked for me. For some reason his style of humor just worked for that character. Like, it's all kind of embodied in that line where he says something to the effect of like, I value peace and I don't care how many men, women, and children I have to kill to get it. And it's just it's that total irony of his character.
And see, I don't have an icy heart, so lines like that are still pretty hilarious to me. It's just there was, aside from moments, there was nothing big about this character that made him a standout for me as I was watching this movie until like the last 2 minutes where he was a bad guy. So I was kind of actually more okay with him betraying everybody than I was with any other aspect of the movie with him in it.
I hear you. Yeah, Mike is in agreement with me. Funniest part, Bloodsport and seeing the kill in the army. That was probably my favorite. That was my biggest laugh for sure.
You know what's funny?
That realization on their face, they're like, oh.
Is I should have seen it coming, right? I should have realized with how little that camp was fighting back. I should have realized they weren't the bad guys. I should have, but I didn't. But I watched the movie with my wife, and even before their contest started, she goes, "Oh, these are all good guys in the camp, aren't they?" And I just went, how did you make that call already?
Yeah, it got me by surprise. So the last main character we got to talk about, which this one might be another one that we differ on, I'm not sure. We've got Harley Quinn. So Harley Quinn, in a certain way, she's still continuing her character arc from the first Suicide Squad movie. They don't really reference the other movies a whole lot. Really, the only change, and I don't remember if they made this change in Birds of Prey or not, is she's got this back tattoo that says property of Joker, but then she changed it to property of no one.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of continuing this whole arc about the first movie where she's kind of that toxic symbiotic relationship where they need each other. Birds of Prey where she's kind of emancipated. And then this movie where she's continuing to do her own thing and it's kind of becoming more of a badass.
Yeah.
Now, I liked her action sequences, especially the one in the hallway where she was taking out all the guards after she killed her almost husband. But for some reason, and I can't exactly even put my finger on it, I felt like she wasn't the standout that I expected her to be. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's just I'm kind of Margot Robbie doing her Harley Quinn thing is not standing out to me anymore, or I don't know if it was there was just something, or maybe I just need her with Joker again to kind of get that dynamic back that I'm missing. But there was just something about her.
Well, did we ever really get that dynamic?
No, not really. And maybe that's what I'm missing. I'm like, okay, enough of just her. But for some reason, when I watched this, that whole segment where she's with that Colombian guy, I think he was Colombian, but the guy that wanted to be her husband, and that whole little side arc just to lead to the Joker, her shooting him. That one section of the movie was the one section where I actually kind of felt like the movie dragged. Because it had this great little pace to where it was just like death, action, humor, and then there's this whole Harley Quinn sideshow that goes on for like 15 minutes. And again, led to a great action sequences where she breaks out, and they're getting ready to break her out, and she's already out. That was great. But something about it, I just felt like she was one of the weaker points, or maybe my expectations were too high. I don't know if you agree.
I'm back and forth. Like, I didn't have anything that stood out to me as negative about her performance. I get what you're saying, though, that she's not a standout character in this one. I think part of that is because, like, Suicide Squad, the first one was her introduction. So it was kind of centered around her and Deadshot. So it was kind of her breakout movie onto the big screen. And then you have Birds of Prey, which, even though it's called Birds of Prey, it was really all about Harley Quinn. So you had two back-to-back movies that were truly about Harley. This felt like a true team movie where almost like no character was supposed to stand out above the other, right? It's like it's about this team, and you never know who's going to die. So Harley was just sort of a member of the team. And I do think there were points where her character was just a little bit annoying. But there were I had kind of the opposite thing when she was with that dude, that guy who El Presidente who wanted to marry her. That was kind of an interesting part of the movie to me, because it's like, oh, okay, so in Suicide Squad, she had this whole relationship with the Joker. Now this guy is the main villain of this movie, and here she is starting a relationship with him. Wonder how that's gonna go, and have it end with her shooting him. It was kind of blown away, because it's like, wow. If that's the case, then what are you doing with the villain, and who is the real villain? So I found that section actually kind of interesting. Some of the montage love stuff went a little long, but otherwise, the idea of it, her falling in love with that guy, he's proposing to her. What's going to happen with that? That was kind of weird. But I also loved her action scene where she broke out of there. Though I got to say, my wife and I were watching it, and I looked over at my wife and I said, "How strong do you have to be? Not only to hold on to those chains, just pull yourself up, but to take your legs, wrap it around somebody else's neck, then pull the both of you up and then snap that guy's neck."
Oh, yeah.
Do you think she became a little bit of a metahuman when she fell in those chemicals? Because she took on a whole army. And now I know she lived with the Joker and was with the Joker, but that dude is not some sleek spy who could train her to take out an entire army single-handedly. So in my mind, I excuse it. She must be a little metahuman.
Yeah, she did have some extreme strength in that scene. I feel like Tarantino secretly directed the first part of Harley's escape scene, which is exactly the scene that you were just describing. What's up, Rudy? We got Rudy in here.
What's up, Rudy?
Here's a good one. So what did you think of Amanda Waller in this versus the first Suicide Squad? I thought that they really leaned into her character a lot more here, where the first one, she was trying to be this very serious, brooding character. Here they kind of embraced both extremes, to where she's this, very cold, calculated person, where even where Bloodshot sticks a pencil, like right here, she doesn't even blink. But at the same time, scenes where she's just going nuts, like, "I'm gonna kill all you," and she just gets whacked with a golf club, and then she's sitting there with the ice pack later. To me, that character is most effective whenever you kind of embrace how ridiculous her swings are. So I liked her a lot more in this one, and I think
anything character related, I'm gonna like better in this one, aside from Will Smith and Margot Robbie, because I thought those two were pretty fleshed out in the first one. But like I said, I wasn't interested in Rick Flag, but I was really sad when Rick Flag died in this one. And so I think they did a good job bringing me into that character more. And so I think it's that same principle. Amanda Waller, whatever, in that first movie. But it was kind of entertaining and interesting to see her be calm, cool, collected, like you said. But then to see her mood swings and that crazy, insane temper, it's like, in no way, shape, or form do you want to mess with this woman. So I feel like overall, her character portrayal, I think, was better in this one. But I could say that of all the characters.
Yeah, exactly. Low bar. So for the most part, we've covered everything with the characters, and the rest of it's just kind of the jokes and the different.
Can I bring up something about a character we have not talked about?
Yes, go ahead.
The Thinker. So
okay.
I got a problem with the Thinker. If his superpower is that he's a super thinker, and he's got these things in his head, and with these things in his head, it's supposed to help his brain, and he's supposed to be even smarter. Not only did he say, "I'm the only one who can control this monster," and he got killed by the monster right away, so showing no control whatsoever, he never outthought a single person. So, for instance, Harley kills the dude who proposes to her. So the president falls to that evil general, and then he gets, eaten by a starfish. But it's like, at no point did the Thinker have some sort of master plan. When they came and said, "All right, welcome to the team," there was no clever moment where he was thinking through this and had plan A, B, C, and D. For somebody called the Thinker, he never really outthought anybody. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know anything about the Thinker, so to me, he was just kind of a throwaway character. Like, here's somebody else from the comics. He was kind of a pawn to me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't really have that much invested in him from the beginning. I didn't think that he was going to become a big villain. Like, in another movie, he probably could have, he's the henchman who's working for all these guys, and by the end, he's the big mastermind. But I for some reason, again, I think I'm on James Gunn's wavelength the whole time I'm watching this. So I expect that his character is just going to amount to absolutely nothing and just die this humiliating death. So I think I was just expecting it. But I agree with what you're saying. Like, maybe by comic book definition, they're like, well, the Thinker got screwed. But I just kind of expected it, I guess. I didn't have anything invested in it.
Well, it's funny because I didn't think about much of it at first, but I was in a conversation with one of my friends, Steve, and he said that. Like, he said that in this conversation we were having. He's like, for somebody who's called the Thinker, he didn't do a lot of thinking or outthinking anybody. Mm-hmm. And I went, oh, yeah, that was the point of the electrodes and all of that stuff. He's supposed to be this genius. And then I started thinking about it. It's like, oh, yeah, I mean, just think Bradley Cooper from Limitless, or, you know, mm-hmm. So it's just like we didn't have any moments like that. It probably didn't need it, but at the same time, it just maybe they could have just used a different villain.
Yeah, for sure. CBMF Productions. I hope the first Peacemaker episode opens with him being told he's in the ICU, and he says, "I see you, but you can't see me." Interesting pun.
That would be pretty funny.
All right, so for the most part, all the movie, there's not like big plot things to go through with the movie, but what did you think about the final villain, Starro the Conqueror? Because I've seen widely different receptions of this. I've seen like the end that I'm kind of on, which is like that's the type of villain that you should expect for a zany movie like this. I thought it was a lot of fun. And then you get people that are like, the main villain's a damn starfish. Like, this is ridiculously stupid.
I'm in the same boat as you. I thought they did a good build up to it. You know, kind of showing throughout the movie how they ended up with the starfish, how America was wanting to experiment on it. They moved it to this island so it wouldn't be done on American soil. So I feel like they did a good enough job building up to it. Plus, I'd seen it in a trailer, so I knew it was coming. But I just felt like even if I hadn't seen it in a trailer, the movie did a good enough job that if they didn't do something with the starfish, like anything, I would have been let down. So when he did come out, I immediately thought the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
But I don't think of that in a negative light because, I mean, that's kind of what Ghostbusters is, right? It's kind of the zany movie about a team coming together, fighting something supernatural. The big baddie at the end is the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And that's kind of what this is. This is a group of people, some of them metahumans, some of them not. They come together, and it fit the whole tone of everything. So it having that Ghostbusters feel of Stay Puft Marshmallow Man running through the city, I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I saw the trailer too, so I was expecting, okay, the starfish is probably going to be the big villain by the end. To me, the tone of this movie, it fit. It didn't feel like, well, that's disappointing. It's just this starfish kaiju that's kind of dumb. The movie's dumb. The movie embraces dumb.
Yeah, the whole movie is dumb. Yeah,
exactly. So that's just like the cherry on the dumb cake. So you have Starro that comes out. You have all these little mini starfish that's just plop, 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 plop on everybody's faces. Then you get all these little zombie starfish, and I like the fact that they could speak for the starfish. So
yeah, that was interesting.
It was just like a hive mind, and it was it wasn't necessarily a sympathetic character, but I like the fact that they kind of set it up that it's not like this thing that's just here to kill humanity. It was just like when he dies, he was like, I just enjoyed floating in space and looking at the stars. Like, and then I had this happen. But I thought it made for a fun little finale. I mean, it made for a fun finale with the Polka Dot Man and That's Your Mom, and even Harley Quinn kind of going and stabbing through the eye and all of that. It was just, it was a fun little third act to me, to where if you're going to have any movie have a starfish, this is the one to do it.
Yeah, I totally agree. You got some comments in here that are kind of like Raven Knight saying that Starro coming out of that thing should have caught the attention of the metahumans like Superman, but no, it's filmmaking. And then Tito said Superman's in the ICU. But this kind of adds into something that I kind of wonder about this movie. So we could tell that it's a sequel to Suicide Squad. It drops the hints that it's a sequel. But at the same time, so since this is state of the DCEU, this kind of brings us into a conversation about the state of the DCEU. This movie is described as a soft reboot. So on the one hand, it is because it wiped out like all the Ayer related characters. It's clean slate. Here we are starting this whole thing over again. But we've never seen Superman in this universe shot with a kryptonite bullet. Like, when did that happen? How far into the future does this take place? How separate is it from the rest of the DCEU? Is this like another timeline where something similar like the first Suicide Squad happened? And the only reason it bothers me, not that it bothers me, because we are going to get the Flash. It is going to explain the multiverse. Maybe that'll help explain this. But it's just, the DCEU has already been so messed up and so disorganized. I just wanted a little organization. We haven't gotten to the Flash restarting things yet. Just lean into the fact that this is in that same universe and tell me a reason why the Justice League isn't here. But it just felt like it was disconnected, but intentionally disconnected. But I'm like, I don't know. I had trouble with that. What did you think?
I've kind of just come to expect that these movies are lightly tethered to the other movies. I think that the MCU has really kind of screwed up a lot of our expectations for universes because you look at the MCU and for the most part, everything ties into everything. This leads into this goes back to this. And the same thing happens in the MCU to where you look at like Captain America Winter Soldier where Shield is literally Hydra, and there's these other carriers that are coming down, and you don't see Iron Man swooping in to save everybody.
That is so true. Yes,
but nobody really says anything. But then you get to the DCEU, and it's just like, where's Superman and all that. And I see that comment a lot, and I think that to a certain degree, I kind of like that approach because we've seen that they struggled in the past with trying to make everything very, very tightly tethered to where this has to be in the same universe. This has to lead to this. We got to see this character show up. We got to have Ben Affleck for 5 minutes in Suicide Squad. We got to show this picture in Wonder Woman. Everything's got to tie together. And I think they learned their lesson. And eventually I think we'll get tighter tethers as they've kind of build more of, we're still on the first couple of years of the new leadership regime over there.
Yeah, that's
especially
true.
after the Flash. The Flash is just going to reset everything to where it's going to tell us very clearly where our expectations should be going forward. But I think they've learned their lesson in establishing clear that this is all the same universe, but not really going so far out of their way to mention everything else to where you could almost watch each individual movie like its own thing. Like Aquaman, you could watch that, and aside from one throwaway line about Justice League, that could be its own thing.
Yeah, that's so true.
And even Wonder Woman 84 to a certain degree felt like this totally different thing.
Oh, that one doesn't fit at all. And it breaks the continuity. And they did that on purpose. So, no, Wonder Woman 84 doesn't even fit. But that's kind of referring to that as part of my frustration. But I get what you're saying. Like, they learned their lesson. It's not working for them. But, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it didn't bug me. I think whenever you had, I mean, if you could split hairs and say, like, did they have enough time? And like Superman's the only one that could get there in an instant. He's the only one that they verbally took out of the equation. Would Aquaman even get there in time? You could talk about all of that. But for me, it didn't even really cross my mind until that comment came up. It was just a kaiju came up. These are the people we're focusing on in this movie. They're the ones that have to deal with it. I think that if Wonder Woman came into the picture, it'd be like, wait, what? This is rated R. You're not allowed to be here. So I was cool with it.
Yeah.
Will Meister had 2 comments. I had the same reaction I did when I saw it on the comic, which was ... okay. And I'm surprised you didn't call this movie Evil Dead 2 to the original's Evil Dead. Well, I wouldn't even. I don't know if I would agree with that comparison, but I see what you're going for. Let me see here. So for the most part, we covered the movie. And we were just talking about Marvel. We were talking about universes and everything like that. So it's a good segue into something that I actually had to rant on in my James Gunn ranking. Because from the moment I dropped my review and started seeing the comment section and started seeing the weekend Facebook posts of everybody that was seeing it, one thing that literally started to make my blood boil, and I don't know if Rudy is still here. So he just commented. I was just thinking about you, Rudy. Rudy had a post that his friend fell into this and did the same exact thing. And then we were kind of ranting back and forth on a private message. I don't understand why every single time a movie has humor, especially when it's a DC property, the first thing that a collection of people want to do is say that it's trying to be Marvel or that it's ripping off Marvel or that they gave up and they're just trying to copy Marvel. Marvel did not invent humor in film. No, they did not even invent humor in comic book films. It's just, it absolutely drives me nuts. There is nothing in this movie that says Marvel to me. I mean, even if you want to say, it's lighter in tone, is it really lighter in tone?
No, it's not lighter in tone.
They're having fun with it, but they're murdering hundreds of people left and right. There's nudity like crazy. I mean, this is a very gratuitous movie.
Yeah.
Gratuitous MCU is not.
No.
they are very much in their nice, neat little compact PG-13 family-friendly box, and I doubt they're ever going to ever break out of that. Not that they even need to, but DC does whatever the hell they want, and that's what this movie is. We're doing whatever the hell we want for 2 hours. How that gets compared to Marvel in any way,
I don't know. I mean,
I don't understand.
The only thing I could think, and the only reason I could think it gets compared to Marvel, is because of the frustration of Justice League, and the first Suicide Squad, because the humor that was in that movie was a reaction to people's responses to Batman versus Superman, right? And so maybe that's where people are thinking that, because I did think the first Suicide Squad was them trying to take a page out of Marvel's handbook. But they didn't know what they were doing, and they really tried to, like you said earlier, go for that Deadpool feel.
Yeah.
And maybe combine that with a little bit of Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, I really feel like that first one was trying to rip it off. Then they reshot like 90% of Justice League just to make it more of that Marvel type humor. And for that, I kind of feel like that, because I feel like in those movies, they were being very reactionary. I feel like sometimes that unfairly carries over, because to me, I watched this movie, there was nothing of Marvel in it whatsoever. Like you said, it was dark, it was gritty, it was gratuitous, it was funny, but that doesn't mean Marvel. Like, humor and heroes and villains cracking jokes does not automatically equal Marvel. So I agree with you in that rant. I just think people are painting everything with the same brush. We've had a few instances in the DCEU where I could agree they wanted to be a little bit more like Marvel and play it a little bit more safe. And guess what? It didn't work.
Thing. Yeah.
And now they're doing something different. And I do give them credit for that. Like, Birds of Prey was one of the, I guess, one of the first ones that tried to do something really different. And then you have this one. And so I don't think this at all was taking a page out of Marvel's book. It's like you said. They said, James Gunn, here's the keys to the kingdom. And that's the ironic thing. I feel like with the first Suicide Squad movie, they're trying to rip off Guardians of the Galaxy and Deadpool. Then they give it to the Guardians of the Galaxy director, and you get a non-Marvel feel.
Yeah, I'm with you. It drives me absolutely nuts. And I know a lot of it is just people that you shouldn't even really pay attention to, because they're just there to stoke flames. And I'm a Marvel guy, screw DC. I'm a DC guy, screw Marvel. And I'm just over here like, what soft heads do you have to just say I can only like one? Like, what do you gain by saying the other one sucks? If you legitimately give every single one of these movies a chance, and it's just like, dude, MCU knocks it out of the park every time for me. DC, I never know what the hell I'm going to expect, and I walk out disappointed every time. Fair enough. I've had that conversation with enough people. But if you walk in and it's like, it's Batman, I'm going to hate it. It sucks. And then you walk out going, yep, it sucks. And it's just like, use your energy on something that matters, please. But it drives me nuts, man. It's just like, it can't win. If it's too dark, they bitch about it being too dark and too bleak.
I know.
And then if it's lighter, or if it's more entertaining, or has more fun with it, then like, oh, you're just trying to be the other thing. And it's just like, what
I feel like that's exactly what's happened in the past. Like, Superman Returns comes out, and everybody was so upset. It was so hokey and so bright and so this and so that. Then the Dark Knight trilogy comes out, and they do so well. So, all right, let's do Superman, and let's make him a little bit more gritty. I liked a gritty version of Superman. I also like a light and hokey version of Superman. And everybody yelled that was too dark. So it's like, you can't win, because it's like nobody can make up their minds. And, it's that small, loud percentage of the population. But, it's irritating. It's irritating constantly having to have those arguments. No, the Suicide Squad is not a copy off of Marvel. It is not ripping off Marvel humor. You couldn't have something that was its own thing than the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm somebody that, not every movie in the DCEU has worked for me, but I'm starting to really appreciate the variety that we have, because you got the very dark, mythic trilogy of Zack Snyder's movies. Then you got something really zany and insane like this. You got something that's ultra throwback, hokey, like Wonder Woman 84. Didn't work for me. Worked for a lot of
that didn't work for me, but
and then you got, something like Shazam that's very much like a family movie. And then you got the first Wonder Woman, it's like a war movie. Aquaman, kind of somewhere in the middle. And we're going to get the Batman that looks like almost like Seven, like a gritty detective story. Then we're going to get the Flash, it's a time travel movie. So I'm really appreciating the variety that we're starting to have. It doesn't feel like, and I think that was the problem whenever Zack Snyder was given the keys and it was just his movies coming out, was that it set like the whole universe was just going to be this dark, stoic tone. And and we've said it a million times, I think they should have spaced it out more, and people would have been more open to it. But I like that. I like the fact that when I walk into a DC movie, if I didn't watch the trailer, of course, I don't really know what I'm going to get. But if I walk into an MCU movie, love the MCU, I know exactly what I'm going to get.
And I think maybe we need that with superhero movies now, because like I don't ever want superhero fatigue. I love the MCU, and I love a lot of stuff.
I'm getting a bit of MCU fatigue though.
I think I'm getting there. Like the shows haven't bothered me, like especially WandaVision and Loki. I enjoyed those, but like I'm not super excited about Shang-Chi like I normally would be a Marvel movie. So it's like, so I feel like the idea of variety, of doing things differently, that I think the genre needs that right now. And so DC might be doing it right by just having one universe with Robert Pattinson, another universe with Joaquin Phoenix, another universe with Shazam. Like, I mean, that could work. Yeah,
we shall see. But I like it.
Yep. You got another $5 here, by the way.
Oh, we do? Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of Guardians of the Galaxy, did you see that cameo? I recognized her, but didn't figure out who she was until after I saw the movie. I did not see the cameo. If somebody wants to enlighten us
see that either.
Really quick. I know that James Gunn had said that there's a Guardian cameo that he's surprised nobody had noticed yet, but I didn't notice it, and I haven't seen anybody like post a screenshot of it. So
I saw a lot of Guardians cameos, so I'm not sure which one we haven't noticed.
If anything, this was more like Tank Girl with Harley, the murders and the humor, and it's a 90 movie. Well, we'll keep going, and maybe somebody will put it up here. But yeah, I did not notice. I was looking for it because I saw that that headline before I saw the movie. Speaking of headlines, the last thing that I wanted us to go over, because just like with the Marvel thing, this is something that it's been driving me absolutely nuts. Just seeing people do what people do nowadays and just share headlines and don't even read into the story. So unfortunately for the Suicide Squad, not necessarily raking in the money this weekend. It's got, the number that I have in front of me is 26.5 million for the first 3 days in North America. 35 million internationally, where by comparison to the last couple of big releases we've had since movie theaters are starting to open up again, Quiet Place Part 2 made 48 million first weekend, Fast 9 made 70 million, and Black Widow made 80 million. So almost less than half than the least grossing of those three. And you got a lot of headlines going around, a lot of Twitter posts, a lot of Facebook posts saying, flop, failure, disaster, heads are going to roll, the DCEU is dead, James Gunn's going to be in trouble. And it's just like,
come on.
The thing that drives me nuts again is that you can't throw those words around in today's climate. If it made $2 million, okay, sure, we can talk about that. But there's so many things, even in a non-pandemic era, there's a lot of things working against this movie that they probably knew they were working against from the get-go. But you add in the pandemic and all that stuff, and these numbers don't surprise me one bit.
Yeah,
I don't look at it as like, oh, that's a huge disappointment. I'm like, well, yeah, you decided to stay with the release date. That's kind of what you get. I mean, we haven't really seen movies blow the lids off the box office. I don't know how long it's going to be before we get back to that. But all the things working against this movie, you've got the R rating, which no matter what anybody says is always going to take a giant chunk out of your box office. You've got the fact that it's a sequel and a trailer that doesn't necessarily let you know that this is a total revamp. It's a sequel to a movie that most people do not like, with the same exact title. Suicide. They put a the there. The trailers weren't great for me.
Nope.
And then you have the whole thing with, it's a bunch of characters that nobody knows. Aside from Harley Quinn, it's a whole bunch of zany characters. It's not like Batman's here. It's not like Superman. It's not like there's huge draws in here. So there's so many things here to where, unless you're like us and you're in the movie sphere and you're watching the news and you're clued into what's going on in Hollywood, and you know that James Gunn's taking this over and he's going to make it R-rated and he's getting full creative freedom and all these little details that we know, we're a very, very, very small minority of movie fans. Most general people, they see a trailer for a sequel to a movie that most people hated. And it's rated R, And it's also a pandemic, so you're taking a risk going out to see this thing. And you add in the fact that this was day and date release on HBO Max. And you add in the fact that not only was it on HBO Max, they also released it the same exact hour that the Thursday screening started. So every other movie that they've released has started Friday. So the hardcore people would be like, I'm not waiting. I'm going Thursday night, and then I'll just rewatch it on Friday. Well, you didn't even have to do that this time. I could have stayed at home and turned this thing on at 7 p.m. Eastern on Thursday and watched it the same exact second as those first people in line at the movie theater. But I went to the theater because I wanted the theater experience. So all of those things added in, yeah, no shit, it didn't make a whole lot of money.
Yep. No, I totally agree with you because no heads are going to roll or anything weird. I just look at that and I go, I don't know. For me, it's an average movie. Like, I didn't hate The Suicide Squad, but I'm not in love with it. To me, it's just not a standout, spectacular movie. It is not the comic book movie. So I wouldn't even think this would be a tentpole movie if this was just that traditional time where things opened on the big screen. Yeah. But it does hurt the fact that it's a simultaneous release on streaming and the big screen, because it's like you said, part of that box office draw is it's a superhero film. So people want to see that. And if they really like it and they want to see it again, they'll pay more money to see it again. Well, now you could go get the big screen experience. And if you happen to like it, I just got to flip on HBO Max and I don't have to pay anything extra to watch it again. So that's like a whole bunch of revenue it's losing. And I think Black Widow had that exact same problem. Like that was one I saw on the big screen because I had family out. My nephews wanted to see it so bad. So we went to the big screen. We saw Black Widow. And that movie was just kind of mediocre to me too. Like I had no desire to go back and watch that again or spring for the 30 extra bucks to watch that on Disney Plus. But when you do that whole simultaneous release, I think that's greatly impacting the box office numbers. Like the whole world has changed right now. So I think if this was regular box office times, like you said, it would not have come in first. Like I just can't picture that. Nobody liked the first Suicide Squad. Like you said, the trailers just weren't that impressive. The movie itself, it's entertaining. It's a fun ride, but it's still in of itself not that impressive. So I don't think this would have been a spectacular box office win anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but the biggest thing for me is that, we have no way of quantifying what this day and date release is doing. And they're not releasing numbers. It's not like Netflix where they're like, man, this was the biggest release. Yeah. I mean, they said that it was, maybe the biggest first day, or they'll release little details like that. But I don't even think that WB or HBO or whoever owns them right now they even know what to do with these numbers yet. This is all an experiment. And every movie that comes out, I don't even know if they is this a victory? Is this a loss? Like, is this going to get better over time? So I don't know. Because you think about, let's assume that most people walked into this movie and they loved it. Well, you have to take out all the people that watched it at home and loved it because they're not paying for the movie theater ticket. And you could take out pretty much everybody for a second viewing, because as risky as a lot of people think it is to go to the theaters now for one viewing, they're damn sure not going to do it a second time.
Right. You're going to watch it on HBO Max.
Yeah, like me. If I had a friend or somebody that wanted to see this, I would, on regular times, I would go to the theater and see this a second time. I'd be like, okay, cool, I'll go with you. Nowadays, no. I'd be like, well, I've already seen it once. I'll just pop it on HBO Max. So there's no second viewings.
Yeah. There's no reason to do that at all.
Yeah, and you got to think about how much money it takes. I mean, you could have an entire family watch this at home for free or for your subscription price to HBO Max. When if you took them to the theater, that's $12 a pop, $10 a pop. So I mean, it's just I don't know.
Wondering how is this going to change movies in the future? Because it is. It's going to completely change everything in the future. Even if we go back to big screen stuff, like it will never be the same. And that part's kind of sad to me. Like the movie Dune, I'm not particularly interested to see Dune, right?
Same.
But I mean, it looks good. It looks visually stunning. And if I am going to see a movie like Dune, I'd like to see that on IMAX and get it for all that it's worth. And, if I ended up liking it, I'd love to go see that again. But it's on HBO Max. It's coming out at the same time. Maybe I'll see it one time on the big screen, but I'm not super hyped on Dune, so maybe I'll just watch it on HBO Max. And so you have to take that stuff into account. And so everything is different now. And like you said, how do you measure that? How do you measure the success of a movie with how it's doing on the streaming as well as with what it's doing on the big screen? So I don't know what this is going to do for potential of the movies in the future.
I think Rudy's talking to you. He says, not a standout movie. They fought a giant starfish, man.
It's still not a standout movie, no. It was cool. Harley Quinn pierced his eyeball. Bullets couldn't pierce his eyeball, but Harley with a javelin could.
Mm-hmm. I think that he was weakened enough by the Polka Dot Man to where things started to shrivel a little bit.
I'll go with that. That's good logic.
There you go. CBMF, do you think this film could have the same effect as Dread 2012, where it doesn't make a splash right now, but people discover it later on? I don't think so, because I think everybody that wants to see this movie is going to see it this weekend, whether you go to the theater or you go to HBO Max. Dread was one of those movies that nobody gave a chance to, and they started hearing, like, dude, it's awesome. Oh, really? Dread? Okay. And I don't think that, I think that it's going to be whatever legacy it was going to have, it was going to have anyway.
You know, it's funny with Dread. I saw that movie and thought, whatever. Mm-hmm. And was bored probably about 2 months ago and watched it again. And I went, whoa, this is really, really good. So I don't know. That was my experience with Dread. I doubt that's going to be my experience with this one, though.
Yeah, it's funny how sometimes that happens where your mood has changed or time passes and your tastes evolve a little bit. I've had that happen with 1 or 2 movies, not very many, but it's always good when you go back and you're like, what was I? Was I like mad the first time I watched this? What's going on? Richard Curtis, I saw this film in the UK in a packed cinema on Saturday, and that was the second weekend over here. I liked it a lot. Not the best film, but I had a lot of fun. Those did around me.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's what it felt like this movie was going for. It wasn't going for the game changer. It wasn't going for top 3 comic book movie of all time. It was going for, hey, come out and have a good time.
Yeah.
And that's what it landed for me.
Oh man, if I had to do a comic book movie of all time ranking, this one would fall pretty darn low because there is a lot of great comic book movies out there. I agree though. It's average. I give it a C. And I can't go above it. I'm not looking forward to seeing it again. But the 2 times I watched it, the first time I watched it, I thought that's okay. And then afterwards, my wife got home from work and I was like, I need to watch this with her. I have got to see her reaction to this movie. And that made me enjoy it a little bit more, like experiencing it with her and her reactions to it. But still, it's just not a spectacular movie for me.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you think that this HBO Max thing that they're doing this year, where all the major releases are going to HBO Max, do you think they're going to continue that next year, or do you think they're going to try to do the premium thing that Disney Plus is doing, or do you think they're just going to pull the plug and be like, nope, got to go to the movies, and we're going to try to delay some things until it's?
I heard a rumor
going to the
and that rumor came from the internet, so therefore it's probably not true. So, but it makes sense to me. I feel like what they will probably start doing is releasing them on the big screen for the first 31 days, and then you could stream it. Like, that's the rumor that I heard. Which I would like that model better, because you want the big screen experience. You want people to go to the theater. You want the box office draw. You don't need a movie in the big screen for like 2 or 3 months. It doesn't do that good after that. You do it for a solid month and then put it on streaming. I think that works.
Yeah, I think they're trying to cut it down to 45 days. It was 90 days or maybe more before you could release a home release, and I think they've been trying to negotiate down to 45. 45 sounds pretty reasonable to me. I get impatient sometimes where I'm like, what the hell is this coming on a Blu-ray? But I'm curious. Again, I'm not a financial genius, so maybe this is a stupid idea that somebody inside of WB be like, no. But I almost think that it would be a cool idea to do something to where you have it exclusively in theaters, but if you go to theaters, you get like a code. And then you go home and that unlocks the movie on HBO Max.
Oh, yeah.
And so after that, you can watch it at home, but you have to go to the theater, and your family members would also go with you. You're not just going to buy one ticket and leave.
Right.
Although I guess people could exploit it that way, couldn't they? Go buy one ticket and not even actually go to the movie. But yeah, something like that, to where you go to the movie theater, you see the movie, your family sees the movie, then you get a code that unlocks it on Amazon or HBO or Paramount Plus or whatever company owns that property. And maybe even not on opening day, like maybe after 2 weeks, the code unlocks or whatever. And that would be a way to do it.
Yeah, maybe
kind of a cool incentive there to where they can kind of get the best of both worlds.
But either way, I
Sure.
see it as changing the face of Hollywood and how movies are released. So in the future, it's all going to be different. And I crack up when I see the headlines that you talk about. We're like, this is a box office failure. It's like everything's a box office failure. Take the one that's doing the best and compare that to the box office numbers pre-pandemic. They're all failures. So it's just kind of ridiculous because the world has changed. Everything about this has changed. So it's, you know, when people talk about the box office, it's hard for me to take that seriously now because it's all done so completely differently.
Yeah. One thing that I do hope, and you know, I'm still holding out hope that we're going to get back to mostly normal at some point. But one thing that I do hope is that if this does change the landscape for box office and what a movie can make and everything, I hope that it makes them start to scale these budgets down and get a little bit more creative, because it's crazy when you see a movie like this that I think costs like $180 million to make. And then you look at Deadpool, which I think costs like $40 million. I could be wrong with that number, but I'm pretty sure it's something small like that. And every single time almost, you look at a movie, whether it's made to be a big budget blockbuster or not, and you look at some of the ones that have the smaller budgets, it always forces them to be more creative with that money.
Yep.
And I just can't imagine, and again, I'm not in the industry, I can't imagine what you spend $180 million on. Like, as big budget as this is, and you get a big, you know, gigantic CG starfish and stuff like that, the rest of the movie, I mean, aside from a bunch of explosions and bullets, it's just like, where maybe salaries, like where
salaries,
$180
stars,
million go.
Yeah, I agree with you though 100%. Like, I'd go back and watch the first Deadpool movie before I go back and watch this one. But I agree, sometimes it's that smaller budget where you know you can't just fix this scene in post with a ton of money. That forces you to do workarounds and be more creative with that. And I do look forward to maybe one day a return to that, because I feel like the way box office numbers are going right now, how are they going to be able to sustain these great big budgets in the future? So maybe we are moving to a time where budgets will have to go down. And so movies will have to be creative with how they do this. That would be something incredibly interesting to see, because I would love to see big tentpole mainstream movies with smaller budgets and forced to be more creative.
Yeah, I'm with you. So we'll see. A lot of unknowns. A lot of things will continue to be unknown.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. I think people need to chill out. I mean, the movie's not blowing the lids off, but you can't throw the words failure and flop around right now.
No.
You just can't, because like you said, that's every movie right now. I mean,
it really is every movie. Like,
even Black Widow,
and they throw these words around about everything. Didn't they throw that around about Black Widow when that first released? They said it's a flop this opening weekend. Disney's in trouble. I'm like, no, it's not in trouble. This is just the weird time that we live in. If it came out on the big screen, it would have been decent. Yeah. They weren't. They didn't plan for this, so they had to kind of figure it out as they went along, and they still are still kind of figuring it out. Is there anything else that you want to talk about regarding the Suicide Squad? I mean, we can wrap up. We'll try to wrap up at an hour and a half, so 13 minutes. We can talk about some of the things coming out, or what our hopes or thoughts are for the state of the DCEU. Although not a whole lot else has really changed news-wise. No. I can't think of too much else to say about the Suicide Squad. I mean, just to kind of wrap up my final thoughts of what you and I have been talking about, I thought it was fun. I thought it was entertaining, but it wasn't spectacular. It wasn't something that I just went, yes, this is the comic book movie. I just, it was fun. I'm done now.
Cool. Yeah. I enjoyed it much more, but I'm kind of the same final thoughts. It's like, okay, cool. Moving on.
Yep.
When's the Batman? Richard Curtis, Leigh Whannell for Suicide Squad 3 on a $5 million budget. That will never happen, but I like the creativity. So yeah, that's about it, guys. Not a whole lot else in the world of DC. We've seen a couple of behind-the-scenes photos of the Ben Affleck Batfleck suit in the stunt driver and stuff like that, but not a whole lot else coming back. We don't have a Flash trailer yet. We don't have a new trailer for the Batman. Not that we need one. I've seen enough. I will be there. But the state of the DCU still going pretty strong for me.
I think so. Yeah. And I think like you said, it's this diversity in the types of movies they're making that is what is making it strong. Absolutely. And I hope we don't get another trailer for the Batman. We will. We'll probably get 3 more. But I love what we got, and that's enough for me.
I'm really hoping that they don't delay it again. Like, I'm really hoping that I know things are looking a little bit more grim here the past couple of weeks, where they're like, numbers are rising.
What's sad? Talk about superhero fatigue, right? I think what might come into play with the superhero fatigue is the fact that everything keeps getting delayed. And we're just so tired of it. It's like, just release it or don't. Come on now.
Exactly. Just fast. Give me that click remote. Let's just fast forward to when this is over. Oh, man. All right, Durban. Well, that is the end of State of the DCEU for this chapter, but we will be back. If nothing else, we'll be back in March with the Batman, but I'm sure we'll get some more things to talk about before then, hopefully. Where can people find you, and what can we look forward to on Durbania?
Well, you can find me on Durbania here on YouTube. Just type in Durbania, the one and only channel that'll pop up. I do a lot of stuff similar to Cody, a little bit less horror, but Cody is my mentor in the horror film area. So like Halloween, I plan to do another Nightmare on Elm Street. So continuing to build that. That was kind of fun last year when I did that one. Do a lot of comic book movie reviews, ranking videos. The most unique thing I do is a theological analysis. I love to find God in these comic book movies. Did one briefly for the Suicide Squad, so that was kind of fun to find little moments like that in there. Been diving deep into this show called The Chosen. That's been a lot of fun building a community around that and diving deep into that. So if you want to check all of that out, come on over to my channel. Love to have you and have that conversation with you.
Awesome. So people watching in the future, I'll have his channel link down in the video description. I'll have to add that once we go off of the live stream. But as far as me for this week, me and Durban were talking before we even went live. I've got a lot of videos that are just sitting there waiting to be edited. And I'm like, your time will come. So I've got the couple of Hellraiser movies I've already made it through. I'm going to make it through all of those and get those videos done before I release the first one. That way there's no big wait. I've got my Dexter season 4 review that's sitting waiting to be edited, so that'll be out sometime this week, hopefully. And then Thursday we have Don't Breathe 2. So Friday you'll get that review, and then at some point this weekend I'm going to see Free Guy with my wife. So you'll probably see a review for that as well.
Yep. Don't forget to say thank you to Chris here.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So we got one more before we get cut out. Chris, The Suicide Squad is the best DCEU movie, in my opinion, and Ratcatcher 2 is my favorite character in it, although Nanu, Bloodsport, and Peacemaker were awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So, yeah, that is it for us, guys. State of the DCU seems strong. Be sure to check out Durbania. Be sure to subscribe here if you're not already a subscriber, and you'll catch us again soon. Until then, see you later.